A dragon is rising in the east and roaring into the 21st century. China. While it may still appear red, more and more scholars are recognizing that the era of Maoist China is over. In its place, an ancient Eastern civilization is indeed re-emerging, not only as one of the largest economies and manufacturers in the world, but as a state dedicated to a nationalist renewal of Chinese culture, custom, and tradition. As China's current mega project, the Belt and Road Initiative, begins to take hold over much of the globe, China is playing a significant role in turning the world back to a more traditionalist vision of civilization. And this has left many wondering, could a religious revival in the East be the end of secularism in the West? Does the rise of nationalist China signify the triumph of liberal globalism on the world stage, or instead, its ultimate defeat? China is one of the most ancient civilizations on Earth, with a population nearing 1.5 billion people and a complex ancient language with thousands of years of tradition behind it. Those traditions, however, came under unprecedented assault with the rise of Marxism in the 20th century. On October 1st, 1949, after having successfully led a communist takeover of the nation, the Chinese communist leader Mao Zedong declared the creation of the People's Republic of China. Subsequently, traditional Chinese culture was brutally suppressed, Confucianism outlawed, and secular atheistic values were ruthlessly enforced. However, after the death of Mao in 1976, the economic reformer Deng Xiaoping managed to outmaneuver Mao's hand-picked successor to become the leader of the People's Republic of China. Deng was known to lean right, both culturally and economically, from party orthodoxy, and as such, he fell out of favor with Mao, who purged him from the Communist Party and had his family arrested and tortured multiple times throughout Mao's Cultural Revolution. Ultimately, however, Deng was able to consolidate his power with less political violence than his predecessor and got to work on reforms. China saw rapid economic growth and success on the world stage as Deng opened the economy and allowed for the growth of free enterprise for the first time in modern China. But what's often overlooked is that Deng's reforms also included a renewal of ancient Chinese tradition. Under Deng, the Chinese government embraced what is called socialism with Chinese characteristics. This was both a rejection of the Soviet path and an embrace of Chinese nationalism that had been suppressed under Mao. Deng was open about greater civilizational pitfalls existing on the left as opposed to the right, saying, quote, "We mustn't fear to adopt the advanced management methods applied in capitalist countries. We should be concerned about right-wing deviations, but most of all, we must be concerned about left-wing deviations." The conservative retraditionalism under Deng Xiaoping has continued to develop to this day in what scholars are calling a Neo-Confucian revival. In 2014, Xi Jinping spoke to an international conference commemorating the 2565th anniversary of Confucius' birth, and recently the government has sponsored the building of Confucian institutes of study and temples, as well as organizing materials and lectures to educate party officials. This revival is entirely under the strict watch of the CCP, of course, but it nevertheless shows how China, the CCP, and Xi Jinping himself understand the rising tide of retraditionalization going on all throughout the world. As the secularism that so dominated the 20th century begins to wane, China realizes it's better to hitch the boat to its more spiritual, civilizational roots, as materialism and secularism has so noticeably hollowed out the Western world. Confucianism emphasizes what are called the 5 constants: benevolence, justice, proper ritual, knowledge, and integrity, as well as 4 cardinal virtues: loyalty, filial piety, fidelity, and righteousness. Confucianism became an integral piece of imperial China, and it was believed that a virtuous king or emperor following the constants and virtues would positively influence the entire kingdom. Chinese kings were thought to have a mandate from heaven, and though Christianity never took institutional root in China, there is evidence that Christianity began to grow in China as early as the 4th century AD, with Confucianist beliefs helping to bridge the moral gap for early Byzantine missionaries preaching the Christian gospel. Interestingly, as President Xi and the CCP re-embrace Confucius, they're also developing their growing relationship with Orthodox Russia. There are currently 4 Orthodox cathedrals openly operating in China, and since 2013, the Patriarch of Moscow and other Russian Orthodox officials have made multiple visits to China and have met with President Xi about protecting Christians and establishing further missions. Moreover, the emphasis on the sanctity of the family in Confucianism has recently led the Chinese government to institute a ban on effeminate men from Chinese television. And last March, the government announced their plan to deliberately cultivate masculinity among young males in order to cohere better with traditional gender norms. And so, all of this raises the question, with so much of the world returning to traditional moral norms, what will become of the radical woke secularism of Western elites? It's not hard to imagine that with the rise of a renewed nationalist and traditionalist China, the days of the global dominance of our woke Western elites are indeed coming to an end. Retraditionalized China represents the rising of a new world order centered on nation, culture, custom, and tradition. A world order that's increasingly consigning our Western globalist elite to the dustbin of history. And as renewed patriot movements begin to rise to power throughout the West, it appears that we can already see how little time liberal globalists have left. What precisely China's role will be in this renewed traditionalist world has yet to be determined. But one thing appears certain. The rebirth of a conservative nationalist age is upon us, and with it, the demise of the modernist globalist world is at hand. As it turns out, the rise of the dragon in the East signifies the sunset of globalists in the West.